They said, don't move off the spot, Cheddar, so I've got to make the most of this one little red bit of carpet. Oh, it may come as a surprise for some of you to know that I'm a little bit of a show-off. I know. But there's one thing I've learned over the last decade. It's to never underestimate the power of making a spectacle of myself. I think we should all show off a little bit more, and I think drag's a pretty good way to do that. I'm not going to lie to you. Drag's not going to solve all of your problems. It's probably not going to pay your bills. It's not going to relieve your depression, your anxiety, or your paranoia. In fact, in my experience, it can actually be a cause of a few of those things. But I'm going to make the claim to you today that I believe that drag is one of the most powerful forms of self-exploration, expression, and political action. I know it's quite a claim. But I am a drag queen. What did you expect when you invited me here today? Some people say expectation is the route to disappointment. I say you have to shoot for the stars sometimes to just get over a hill, don't you? Surely throwing on a wig and a pair of heels can't be that profound an experience. And I think that's because a lot of people think that drag is like pretending to be somebody else. That we've created a persona, and we're going to assume that persona so we can get away from the other thing. We're going to hide behind all of this. I'll tell you one thing today. The one thing I can't do is hide right now. I think that also the other assumption people make about drag is that it's another word for cross-dressing. That specifically it means men dressing up as women, which seems very unfair in 2020. I think we should all have the right to feel this uncomfortable. You know what I mean? So I'm going to spend just a brief moment dispelling that. And I think it stems a lot from a myth that's recited a lot about drag. And it relates back to the Elizabethan period. And during that time, women weren't allowed on stage because of the patriarchy. It was a thing. And during that time, women's parts were played by men. And William Shakespeare, who was the only playwright in Elizabethan England, according to popular history, he would write in the margins of his plays, D-R-A-G, dressed resembling a girl. This is the story that's told. Quite a lot of the time when I tell that story, people go, oh, I see. No! We're going to dispel this story. Mostly because it's wrong, and I'm going to tell you why it's wrong. Firstly, it actually would have been an unnecessary thing to say. The male actors who had the female roles knew they were going to be dressed in women's clothing because women weren't allowed on stage. The other reason that I think is perhaps a little bit more important is that people didn't even use acronyms back when Shakespeare was writing. They didn't come about until the late 18th century, when in fact women were allowed on stage, so they wouldn't have been necessary at the time then anyway. But the third, and I think the most important reason, is that that way of describing drag just doesn't reflect the many different styles of drag that people do now, and the many different styles that people have done drag historically. I didn't just make an error today and failed to put my breasts in. I wasn't trying to look like a woman from the start. Drag comes in many, many different forms. It's more likely that the word drag, because I'm going to give you the answer as well, or at least the potential answer, because history's happened. The more likely reason is that it would have reflected the drag of a large costume. And that could have been a cape. I don't have one now. It could have been a cape, or it could have been a large dress that dragged along the floor. So it was a much more versatile term. It related a lot less to dressing up as a woman and much more to the communicative value of wearing a lovely frock. In fact, when anybody ever tells you that it's only men who are allowed to do drag, they're not telling you some secret drag history. They're just reviving the good old-fashioned patriarchal tradition of excluding women from stage. But I wasn't interested in dressing resembling a girl. When I grew up, it was the monsters, the aliens, the robots, the gods and the goddesses of science fiction and fantasy that beguiled me. And I'd look up at these people and these amazing beings with all of their power to change their worlds. It's the fact that they had a voice, the fact that people were listening to them. And I wanted a little bit of that. Drag is very much, for me, about claiming that power. And I think a lot of the time that's how people look at people like Beyonce and Madonna, right? As these sort of otherworldly beings. It's just that my reference material was different. I wanted to claim that power to change the world in a different way, as an alien goddess. And very much as well about being seen. And I think everyone can relate to that feeling that something about them isn't being acknowledged or isn't being seen. I think we make choices every single day about how we're going to show ourselves to other people, and so few of those choices are taken for ourselves. We hide things in case people see them. We want to accentuate the things that we think people might like. I describe drag as finding that thing that people don't see, that I want them to see, and making it the only thing that they can see. And this can be a really profound experience for anybody who has ever felt the need to conform for somebody else's comfort. It's hardly a surprise that so many LGBT people, at some point on their journey of self-discovery and play, have encountered drag and have played with drag as a way of discovering a little bit more about themselves. It's a great playground to do that. But I don't think it's limited to LGBT people. I think a lot of women can relate to that experience. I think a lot of people of color can relate to that experience. I think a lot of people with mental health issues can relate to that experience. People who have experienced trauma. Even you, cisgendered men. That's the word for you, by the way, in case you didn't know it. You're special too. Even you, cisgendered men, you, I'm sure, feel a pressure to conform to certain things in our society. What's wonderful about drag is that it allows us to let go of those things. And letting go of those things feels amazing. And I think we're all kind of waiting for permission to let go of those things as well. Because when you do it, everyone says, you're inspirational, you're beautiful, you're brave, you're amazing. And what's great about that is the praise comes directly to you. It's not like you've done a painting or you've baked a cake and somebody's going, well done, you did ever so good. It's coming towards you. It's praise that you can't escape. It's your body alive in that moment. And people listen to you as well, like you're all doing right now. It's funny, I spent 10 years at university, and yet it took 3 hours of makeup for people to want to listen to me doing a TED Talk. It's a strange thing. But when people do listen to you, you're able to highlight things. I'm able to highlight aspects of myself to you. I'm able to highlight things that I think my community needs. I'm able to highlight things I think you need. I'm able to highlight things that I think are going wrong in the world and I want other people to think about. We may not be able to solve the world's problems with an eyelash and a bold lip liner, but we can draw attention to them. And it's not all about other people and saving the world, obviously. I do get some stuff out of it as well. There are fringe benefits for myself. I've discovered what I call a seepage. It's not a great word for it, I admit. But it's the word that I use to describe how the feeling of being able to face anything that you get when you're in drag, because you've got your armor, you know, you may be projecting out, but it's protecting you. The way you have that feeling and how it seeps much more into your everyday life. You feel that confidence. And I think it's because you have to get to know yourself very well. You have to come to be very comfortable with yourself. I may look covered up right now, but I spend a long time in a mirror putting this on. I know what my face looks like. I know what works with my face. I have feelings of insecurity about my face, just like everyone else. But you know, I've come to accept it. The same with my body. I know what works in my body. I know what doesn't work on my body. I know sometimes I'm going to have lumps and bumps that other people will see. You have to come to accept it, even when you're using corsetry and padding to change that shape. The funny thing is that when you do that, when you change the shape of your body, when you change the way that you look, you start to understand how so much of that stuff that we worry about when it comes to beauty is fake. It's all about how long you spend in front of the mirror. It's a constructed fantasy. More than that, though, I think it means that you have to spend a lot more time looking at what's inside, because you have to figure out what's the story you're going to tell people. Who is the person you want to show when you get rid of all those conventions that are attached to your body? Maybe it's the inner beauty, maybe it's the inner bitch. It's the people that we feel we're not allowed to be in our everyday lives, that we think may not be practical and may not be tolerable. The people who we may not be able to be because of the expectations people have of our gender or just social convention in general. I even know drag queens who use it as a form of therapy, as a way of coming to terms with experiences of trauma. A way to take the pain that you may feel inside that you think isn't being recognised and show that to the world. And the really great thing about drag is that whether you are showing people that expectation of beauty that we have of ourselves, or whether you're showing them the pain you feel, you get to take it off. You get to take control of it. Just a little bit every time you do it. And hopefully, it allows you to move past that. It's a way of unraveling the fantasies and expectations we have of ourselves and each other. And things like celebrity as well. Do you know, I think we have a lot of expectations of ourselves that come from all this stuff that's been to us constantly, of the way that we should look and the way that we should act. Drag queens are a little bit like celebrities, but with celebrities you can get a little bit closer to. Celebrities you can touch, not like that. I saw the way you looked at me. But we let you get close enough to see the cracks. We show you that we're not just this, generally. Even if you don't see the other side of me, even you know it's there. You know that this isn't my everyday. There's a duality to what I'm showing you right now. I think one of the most powerful things about drag is its obvious artifice, is its fakeness. You all are in on the joke. You know that I'm not a 486-year-old unicorn alien person. Although that is exactly the sort of thing a 486-year-old unicorn alien person would say to throw you off the scent, isn't it? But you know at least that I don't claim to look like this every day, and I don't expect you to either. I think the last thing that any of us need in the age of social media, targeted ads, unrealistic beauty expectations, and Love Island lifestyles is another set of expectations that we've failed to live up to, eh? Beauty bloggers beware. Drag is not the new daytime look. We are here to break the rules, not to make new ones. I think the real power of drag comes in being able to take it off and still feel good. I think that by doing so, by you all knowing that I do take this off, we maybe show that extraordinary things and extraordinary people can also be ordinary, and maybe also suggest that people who feel themselves ordinary can be extraordinary and do extraordinary things. Perhaps you don't buy it. Perhaps you don't buy that. What's our expression again? That drag is the most, I've upgraded it, drag is the most powerful form of self-exploration, expression, and political action. Fortunately, I don't need to prove anything to you. Drag is everywhere. It always has been. It's already changed the world, and it continues to do so. Since the first Paleolithic shaman daubed their faces in paint and danced their frenetic routines at the dawn of humanity, we've been like a recurring explosion of binary-busting energy that brings people together around new ideas, influencing the worlds of fashion, of art, of music, participating in protests, from Stonewall to recent climate change rallies, maybe even just influencing large companies to force them to get us to allow to use the names that we want to use on social media, or maybe even the other things, doing a fundraiser for a local hospice or a HIV charity. I guarantee you that wherever the world is being changed, somebody, in one way or another, will be making a spectacle of themselves. Thank you very much.